I'm Trutiyatri, you're watching TimesXP and welcome to the top US news. A new immigration crackdown under US President Donald Trump has sparked major concern across the United States. This time the focus is not just on the border, but on migrant children who are already living in the country. Many of them were staying with their families. In recent weeks, immigration officers have visited the homes of these children and taken about 500 of them into federal custody, separating them from their families once again. The agency behind these action is ICE, of course, and they are doing what they called welfare checks, visits that are supposed to make sure that the kids are safe. But many legal experts and child advocates say that these visits are actually being used to enforce immigration law, not to protect the children. According to them, this is just another way the government is trying to scare families and make life harder for the undocumented immigrants. Once taken, then these children are sent to shelters or foster homes managed by the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is part of Department of Health and Human Services. You know what's worrying is that it's now becoming really hard for the families to get their kids back. The Trump administration has added new rules. Parents or guardians must show income, document, pass DNA tests, and provide very strict ID proof. Now, for many undocumented families, this process is nearly impossible. This means that kids are staying in custody for much longer than before. Back in December 2024, children stayed about 67 days with ORR custody. But by April 2025, the number jumped to 170 days, almost 6 months on an average. Adding to the concern, there is now a war room in Washington, D.C., where different government agencies, including ICE, can see private information about these children, like medical records and asylum applications. This kind of data was always kept separate from immigration enforcement, but now it's being shared widely. Critics say that this violates the basic idea of keeping child protection separate from the law enforcement. Some officers are even showing up at the child's home without any warning, asking personal questions, and in some cases, taking children away on the spot. Families are worried that these visits might also be used to target and arrest the parents or the sponsors later on. In fact, one mother has been unable to bring two of her sons home from foster care for months, all because she couldn't provide the documents now required under the new rule. Well, the lawsuit has already been filed against the Trump administration, claiming that these changes are hurting innocent families and separating children from loving homes for no valid reason. The administration says that it wants to bring order and integrity to the system. But experts believe that this is actually about making life more difficult for the migrant families as a way to scare others from coming to the US. Many people of Indian origin who now live abroad often want to stay connected to India, right? One way to do that is by getting an OCI card, which stands for Overseas Citizen of India. This card is not as same as Indian citizenship, by the way, but it gives you several rights and benefits in India, like ability to live, work, or study long-term without a visa. The OCI scheme was introduced back in 2005 under India's Citizenship Act of 1955. It's mainly for people whose families were once Indian citizens. But not everybody is allowed to apply here, and there are clear rules about who can and who cannot get this card. So the first, who can apply? If you are now a citizen of another country, but you or your parents, grandparents, or even great-grandparents were citizens of India on or after January 26, 1950, you can apply. Even if they were simply eligible to become Indian citizen at that point of time or belong to a region that later became a part of India, you are likely eligible. The rule also includes children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of such individuals, but you must be an adult with the full mental capacity to register on your own. Now here's the important part. Who is not allowed to apply? If you or your parents, grandparents, or great grandparents were citizens of Pakistan or Bangladesh, you cannot apply for an OCI card. This is a strict rule set by the Indian government. Also, in future, if India adds more countries to this not allowed list, those will be mentioned in official government notification. You might wonder, right, can children apply? So yes, minor children can also get an OCI card. But the same rule applies. If the child's parents, grandparents, or great grandparents were ever citizens of Pakistan or Bangladesh, the child is not eligible. To apply, you have to go online and fill out a form on the official OCI portal. And yes, the URL link is given right at your screens just for help. You will need to upload scanned copies of documents like your passport, proof of Indian origin, photos, etc., and pay the required fees. So basically, in short, the OCI card is a special link to India for many families who are living abroad. But it comes with strict conditions. In a move that's raising a lot of concern, the Trump administration has instructed the immigration officers in the United States to increase arrest of undocumented immigrants, even if they don't have an official warrant. Officers from ICE have reportedly been told to get creative and take action even against people whom they weren't originally targeting. Now, let me tell you what's exactly happening. Internal emails reviewed by reporters show that senior ICE officers recently sent messages to their team across the country, pushing them to make more arrests. One email even said that officers should turn up the creative knob to 11 and look for new ways to push the envelope. Well, in other words, go beyond usual tactics. Another message said that if it involves handcuffs on wrists, it's probably worth pursuing. You know what's specifically alarming is that the officers were told to arrest collaterals. Now, this means people who are not the main target, but they are simply present when IC comes to arrest somebody else. For example, if an officer go to arrest a person with a deportation order and find their roommates or cousins who are also undocumented, they might arrest them too, even if they weren't looking for that person in the first place. Well, this is controversial because IC usually needs a warrant to make arrests. Being undocumented is a civil offense, not a criminal one. So, arresting somebody without a proper warrant or strong legal reasons can violate these rights. In fact, back in 2022, a legal settlement required ICE to follow strict rules, like proving that somebody was likely to escape before arresting them without a warrant. That agreement ended in June 2025, but the legal experts say that ICE is already ignoring the protection that it once promised to follow. According to Mark Fleming, a lawyer with the National Immigrant Justice Center, these emails show that ICE is going back to aggressive tactics that can actually hurt people who don't even have a criminal background. Some immigration rights groups are already preparing to take the government back to the court, saying that these new actions break past agreements. In fact, these orders may lead to more raids, more racial profiling, and even the wrongful arrest of legal residents or the US citizens. The pressure to ramp up the arrest appears to be coming from the top level, of course, and that too of the Trump administration. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and top advisor Stephen Miller are reportedly pushing for ICE to arrest at least 3,000 people per day. IC officials were told to share these new tactics with the other law enforcement agencies too, which means that local police may also start getting involved in making immigration arrests. Well, in defense of the crackdown, a Department of Homeland Security official said that this isn't new. They are just focusing on removing criminal illegal aliens. But critics say that this new policy is very different from the Obama and Biden eras, when IC focused mainly on immigrants with serious criminal records. Now, under Trump, it seems that any undocumented person can be targeted, even if they have done nothing wrong except for overstaying a visa or live quietly in the country. Michael Kagan, an immigration law expert, says that this particular approach is very dangerous. It could easily lead to mistakes, abuse, or fear in immigrant communities. When Indians come to work in the United States, many expect to focus on their skills and work really hard. But there is one challenge that often goes unnoticed: pressure to change or Americanize their names and hide parts of their culture at work. Well, why names matter so much? Your name is a big part of who you are. For Indians, names are often connected to religion, family, region, and culture. Names like Srinivasan, Bhattacharya, or Harpreet carry deep meaning and identity. Well, when you hear about Srinivasan, then maybe you think about South India. When you think about Harpreet, you might consider that the person is from Punjab. But in many American workplaces, these names can sometimes be hard for colleagues to pronounce or remember. Now, because of this, many Indian professionals feel the need to use nicknames or shortened versions of their names. For example, Srinivasan becomes Shri, Bhattacharya becomes Bhatt, or Harpreet might choose Harry. Sometimes Indians even pick completely different English names like John or Michael just to fit in. You know how common this is? In 2022 survey by the Society for Human Resource Management found that about 60% of Indian professionals in the US have either shortened their name or used nickname at work just to avoid confusion or mispronunciation. Another study at Harvard Business Review showed that employees with ethnic names are more likely to experience bias in hiring and promotion. But why do Indian workers feel this pressure? Well, there are several reasons. Avoiding mispronunciation and embarrassment. Many people struggle to say or remember unfamiliar Indian names, which can lead to awkwardness or repeated correction. Then also there is fear of being judged or treated differently, and some Indian workers worry that having a foreign sounding name might make managers or co-workers see them as less competent or different. Also, there is big desire to fit in. In a country where fitting into the workplace culture matters, many Indians feel changing their name or hiding cultural traits just to make their lives easier. But yes, it's not just the names. Many Indian employees also feel the need to downplay or hide parts of their culture. For example, avoid talking about festivals like Holi or Diwali, not bringing traditional Indian food to lunch because of fear of being judged, not wearing cultural attire like kurtas or saris even on special days, avoiding speaking in native languages at work. Now, this code switching, changing how one behaves to fit into a different culture, can cause a lot of stress and make Indian workers feel like they are losing a part of themselves. The pressure to Americanize can affect mentally and also the job satisfaction and even career growth. Many people feel that they must hide who they really are. It can lead to lowering their self-confidence and self-esteem, feeling isolated or disconnected at work, less engagement and motivation. Plus, companies lose out on the full creativity and innovation that comes with employees feel safe and proud of their identities. But you know what are companies doing? Some companies are starting to understand this problem. Big tech firms like Google, Microsoft, and IBM are encouraging diversity and inclusion by offering pronunciation guidance to the employee's name, hosting cultural awareness programs and celebrations, promoting open conversation about identity and bias, and also ensuring employees to use their real name and cultural expressions freely. Now, the part of Indian professionals. What can they do? They can educate their co-workers, like gently teach them how to pronounce your name correctly. Also, be proud of your name and culture. It's your strength. Look for colleagues who respect diversity and can support you. Also, if you feel pressure to change or hide, discuss it with your HR or leader. In the end, the hidden battle over Indian names and identities in American work culture is real, and it affects many. A recent story shared on social media has started a big conversation about how some Indian managers treat their teams in American tech companies. The story comes from an American software engineer who talked about his tough experience working under an Indian manager at big companies like IBM and Amazon. The engineer began by talking about his first job at IBM after college. He and many other fresh graduates joined the company all at once, but their manager didn't personally pick them. They were simply assigned. He said that his India manager tried to remove him and three other American teammates from the entire group. According to the engineer, the manager wanted to keep mostly Indian employees. Luckily, a colleague who was respected by the company helped him stay and even promoted him later because she saw his skills. Then the engineer shared what happened at Amazon. At first, he did very well under an American manager who praised his work, gave him top ratings, and even raised his salary by 33%. But when that manager left, the engineer was put under a new Indian manager, one level above his direct boss. This new manager didn't seem to like him and soon after that put him on a performance improvement plan, which means that he was warned about his work. The engineer felt that this was unfair because the manager gave negative feedback even though he didn't work closely. He said that the same manager treated another American co-workers badly too. The engineer warned others to be very careful about working on team lead by Indian managers if they are not Indian, saying that these managers might not value their work and could try to get them in trouble. But yes, this story got so many people talking online. Some agreed, sharing their own experiences. One person said that all their managers at Microsoft were Indians and that those managers did not keep non-Indian employees on their team for long. Another one said that many Indian managers want control and power, and it's easier to work under non-Indian managers who focus more on job. But yes, not everybody agrees with the criticism. Some people shared positive experience with Indian managers as well. For example, one American said that their Indian manager was kind, supportive, like a friend. Another person from a minority background said that their Indian managers treated them with respect. Well, this conversation shows how workplace culture can be really complicated, specifically in the big tech companies with diverse teams. It highlights the challenges both that migrant managers and local workers face and how important it is for companies to build fair and respectful workplaces for everybody out there. Many Indians, specifically Gujaratis, have made a life in the United States by applying for asylum, and we all know that. Once they file an asylum case, they usually receive a work permit within 6 months. Well, this work permit allows them to live and work legally while their case is being processed, something that can take actually years. Over time, many have also received social security numbers and even 5-year work permits that are regularly renewed. But now, that entire system could be changed. US President Donald Trump, who is once again back in the office, wants to crack down really hard on undocumented immigrants, and it's no secret. And according to the CBS News report, he's planning to make a big change that could affect thousands of people, specifically from communities like the Indian diaspora. So, what is Trump planning? Sources inside the US Department of Homeland Security says that Trump wants to stop giving work permits to people who apply for asylum. Under the current rules, you can apply for a work permit 6 months after filing for asylum. But Trump wants to change that. His proposed rule says no work permit should be given until and unless the asylum case is fully decided, and that's a process that rarely fixes in 6 months. To put things into perspective, then in 2024, over 77% of asylum applications had been pending for more than 6 months. Some people had been waiting for more than 2 years, and during that period of time, they had been legally allowed to work and support their families. But Trump's plan could remove that lifeline. Imagine this. You spend lakhs of rupees to reach the US, apply for asylum, and then wait. If you are not allowed to work legally, how will you survive? Many people may be forced to either work illegally or leave the country, both risky and dangerous options. The US started offering work permits to asylum seekers back in 1990. The logic was simple. If somebody's case isn't resolved within 180 days, they should at least be allowed to earn and survive. But with Trump's new policy, even that could disappear. In fact, officials have said that even if your asylum claim is processed in time, you may still have to wait 12 months just to apply for a work permit. As of now, this particular rule hasn't officially been implemented and there is no confirmation date to this. It's still under review, but if it becomes a law, it could be one of the biggest changes in the US immigration policies in decades. And yes, here's another eye-opener. Recently, 1.5 million asylum cases are pending with USCIS, and 2 million cases are waiting in immigration courts. With such a massive backlog, resolving cases in just 180 days is next to impossible. So, what does this mean for Indians? It means that the pathway ahead could actually become more difficult. If the government stops giving work permits, people will lose their jobs, face financial stress, and may be forced to leave the US even without being deported. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updates.